भी नहीं चलो बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलामु अलैकुम Today we are going to study nervous system with Miss Sarwat Atiq. Please Miss Sarwat come forward and deliver your lecture.
Thank you, Hira. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sarwat Atiq and today we are going to study the nervous system. Okay, first of all, we will see the basic organization of the nervous system, what it is basically composed of. Okay. Structurally, nervous system is divided into two parts, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system consists of the nerves and ganglia. Okay. So organization of the nervous system, and we'll see the functional division of the nervous system. Functionally, the nervous system is divided into two divisions, sensory division and motor division. So sensory division is basically carrying all the information from the peripheral parts of the body to the central nervous system, to the brain and spinal cord. There, the information is processed and then it is delivered back to the body and to the peripheral parts of the body and the internal organs through the motor division. And the motor division is further divided into autonomic and somatic. So autonomic is concerned with the involuntary responses, and somatic system is concerned with the voluntary responses as a skeletal muscle system. So in the flow chart, you can see that central nervous system divided into the information is carried to the central nervous system through the peripheral nervous system, and then the peripheral nervous system is divided into the autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system, and then autonomic nervous system is divided further into sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what is the basic function of the nervous system? Basically, there are three functions of the nervous system. First, collection of the sensory input. It collects the information from the sensory receptors of the body, such as eyes, ears, okay, and touch receptors in the body. They carry the information to the brain. Number two process is that this information which is carried by the sensory organs is processed in the brain, is integrated in the brain. Integration basically means that the important information is being processed. Almost 99% of the information that is reaching the brain is discarded by the brain as irrelevant information because it is not necessary. As we are setting and we are focusing on the person we are saying or the main thing in our view. Okay, we will neglect the noises and the background. So because it is not important. So the integration basically means that important information reaches the higher centers of the brain, and basically the important information which is reached to the cerebral cortex is that we can sense it and we can perceive it. Other information like the noises in the background, we cannot consciously perceive it as our brain has ignored it. Number three is the motor output. Okay, so when the information is integrated and processed, then the brain sends the signal through the motor neurons to the effectors of the body. So effectors basically are two types of effectors, skeletal muscles and organs. So a brain sends information to the skeletal muscles to perform certain actions. In the diagram, you can see simplest example of this. Okay, so glass is in front of the person. The person sees through the eyes, okay, and eyes carry the sensory information to the brain, and brain processes whether the body needs the water or not. So if the body needs the water, the person will feel the thrust, and then the brain directs the skeletal muscle of the arm to pick the glass and drink water. This is the simplest example. Okay, here it is shown how the signals are carried through the different receptors of the body to the higher centers of the brain. The details of this are given later in the chapter. It is basically to show how these receptors in the joints, in the muscles, in the skin, they are all carrying the information by the way of the spinal cord to the higher centers of the brain. You can see that a few information or a fewer information will reach the higher centers of brain, which is really important. Okay. So these are the terms that will come later in the chapter. So we should clear this now. The nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is organized basically into two components: gray matter and white matter. So gray matter basically are the collection of the cell bodies of the neuron, or cell bodies and with the collecting neuron. We will study the structure in the next slides. And the white matter is composed of the axons of the neuron. Neuron. Neuron is the basic structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Okay, and human nervous system contains over 100 billion neurons. So the function of neuron is to receive and integrate the incoming information from the sensory receptor or from other neurons to transmit information to the neurons or effector organs. Basically, it receives the information and then integrates it and then passes it to the next neuron. Okay, here is the structure of the neuron. In large portion in the center shows the cell body of the neuron, and the processes that are coming out of the cell body are the dendrites. Dendrites basically carry the information towards the cell body, and there is a large segment. This is known as axon. Axon carries the information away from the cell body, and there are shown the junctions at the end of the axon, and there this sheath called the myelin sheath. This is present in few neurons, and it helps in the quicker transmission of the nerve impulses. Neurons. Okay, information is passed between the neurons as specialized regions called synapses. So there is a region between the two neurons. The junction between the two neurons is called synapse. The details of which are later in the chapter. So basically, I'm giving you a basic idea of the synapse, where the so basically the information is carried to the cell body through the dendrites. Okay, and then information is processed in the cell body. Then cell body directs this information in the form of nerve impulses to the axon. When the information reaches at the end of the axon forms the junction with the dendrites of the next neuron. So this junction is called the synapse, and it passes information from the axon of the one neuron to the dendrite of the next neuron. Like this information is passed from nervous system to the peripheral parts of the body, and also carried from the peripheral parts of the body to the central nervous system. Synapse basically determines the direction of the nervous system, direction of the nerve impulse. Okay, the transmission of the information between neurons almost always occur by the chemical rather than electric means. So, electric potential, as we studied in the before, that electric potential causes the action potential causes the release of the specific chemical that are stored in synaptic vesicles in the presynaptic ending presynaptic ending of the axon. These chemicals are known as the neurotransmitter and diffuse across the narrow gap between the pre and postsynaptic membranes to bind to the receptors of the postsynaptic cell. In this way, the information and the signal is passed from one neuron to the other through by the chemical means. And these chemical substances are called the neurotransmitters. The diagram shows the process of how it is released, and the details of which are later in the chapter. Now, There are other cells in the nervous system, the neurons, and these are called the neuroglia cells. Neuroglia cells constitute the other major cellular component of the nervous system. It is specialized connective tissue for the nervous system. Unlike the neurons, neuroglia do not have direct role in information processing, but they are essential for the normal functioning of the nerve cells. Okay, they are the supporting cells. They provide the nutrition to the neurons. They do not function. They have no part in the transmission of the signals. There are main three types of neuroglial cells: oligodendrocytes. They form the myelin sheath that surrounds the neural axons, which increases the rate of conduction. Okay, they form the myelin sheath. Number two are the microglia. They have a phagocytic role in response to the nervous system damage. Okay. Number three are the astrocytes. They provide the biochemical support for the endothelial cells that form the blood-brain barrier. So basically, the neuroglia are the supporting cells, okay, of the nervous system. And here is also the detail of the different neuroglial cells as the Schutzmann cells, oligodendrocyte, astrocytes, and microglia. These all cells are the supporting cells and providing nutrition and support to the parts of the nervous system. That's it for all. Thank you.
Sarvat, will you please explain about phagocytic activity?
Okay. You are basically asking about the astrocytes. Okay, you're asking microglia have a phagocytic role in response to the nervous system damage. As you know that when the cells are damaged in the tissue, the necrosis will begin, and this tissue which is damaged, the um, uh, it releases the ranges chemicals that will affect the healthy cells of the tissue as well. So when the tissues are damaged, so these cells should be phagocytosed by the cells, so that the healthy cells of the tissue are not affected. So microglia basically phagocytose those cells of the nervous system that are damaged, so they cannot cause further damage to the nervous system.
Will you also explain about blood-brain barrier?
Okay. So astrocytes maintain the blood-brain barrier. They provide the biochemical support for endothelial cells that form the blood-brain barrier. Basically, the endothelial cells are the cells in the in the blood capillaries में जो होते हैं. They the blood is flowing in these capillaries, and the blood is transfused between these capillaries and the interstitial fluid. As we already studied, the blood is interchanged between the blood capillaries, and the interstitial fluids, and the chemicals are constantly changing. So these endothelial cells are delicate, so they need a support or physical or biochemical support maintain and not rupture. So these cells basically provide them the support so they can when the blood pressure increases, so they can support the endothelial cells, and the endothelial lining do not burst when the blood pressure becomes too high.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sarvat. Further questions will be answered in a separate session if they are asked. Thank you so much for your time. and for giving the lecture about basic neurons and neuroglia cells. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.